Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. This is Pursue 17G, which is Hematology Malignant Myeloid Disorder, and we are streaming live from MMI MSR Ambala via Kolkata. And continuing our topic of myeloproliferative neoplasm, today we have the BCR ABL negative myeloproliferative neoplasm. And to speak on that, we have Dr. Ariba Zaidi. She is an MBBS and MD pathology from PGI Chandigarh. Presently, she is an assistant professor. Presently, she is an assistant professor in MMI MSR Mulana Ambala. Her areas of interest are hematology, lymphoma, breast pathology, and soft tissue tumors, with multiple publications in international and national journals and many presentations in national conferences with awards. Before I ask Dr. Zaidi to start, let me request all of you to please keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request, ma'am, please share your screen. Let's start.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Today, the topic which we are going to discuss is in continuation with the previous lecture, which was on chronic myeloid leukemia. And today, we will be discussing BCR-ABL negative myeloproliferative neoplasms. So, according to WHO 2017, the myeloproliferative neoplasms have been categorized in the following entities as chronic myeloid leukemia, which is characteristically BCR-ABL1 positive, and the other entities which are BCR-ABL1 negative are chronic neutrophilic leukemia, polycythemia vera, primary myelofibrosis, essential thrombocythemia, chronic eosinophilic leukemias, and myeloproliferative neoplasms unclassified. So the first one which we will talk about is polycythemia vera. It is one of the MPNs which is characterized by increased red cell production. This production is independent of mechanisms that normally regulate the erythropoiesis. So there will be increase in number of red blood cells per unit volume of blood, more than 2 standard deviation from the age, sex or race adjusted normal values of hemoglobin, hematocrit and red cell mass. The true increase in red blood cells must be distinguished from the relative or spurious polycythemia, which may occur due to hemoconcentration. The epidemiology of polycythemia vera, it is more common in males as compared to female to a ratio of 1 to 2 is to 1. The age range is between 60 to 80 years, and also familiar occurrence have been reported in up to 6% of these patients. There are many secondary causes of polycythemia which need to be excluded before making a diagnosis of a myeloproliferative neoplasm, which include congenital as well as acquired causes. Congenital causes could be VHL mutations or 2,3-BPG mutase deficiencies, high oxygen affinity hemoglobin, congenital methemoglobinemia, and various acquired causes such as carbon monoxide poisoning, smokers polycythemia, or sleep apnea, and other neoplastic disorders. The neoplasms which can lead to a secondary polycythemia could be a cerebellar hemangioblastoma, uterine leiomyoma, meningiomas, hepatocellular carcinomas, renal cell carcinomas, and others which lead to increased levels of erythropoietin. Coming to the pathogenesis of polycythemia vera, it is a clonal stem cell disorder, and earlier the clonality of polycythemia vera was not obvious. The studies which were carried out in women having polycythemia vera who were heterozygous for G6PD deficiency were conducted in past, and these studies demonstrated that the probable clonal origin of polycythemia vera at the pluripotent hematopoietic progenitor level. There is an increase in the cycling of primitive burst forming units and colony forming units of erythroid progenitors, and it has been found that there is increased amount of erythroid progenitor colony formation in vitro without addition of erythropoietin. So this is considered to be the hallmark of the development of polycythemia vera. This could be due to a true erythropoietin independence or due to exquisite sensitivity to small quantities of erythropoietin. Apart from interleukin 3 and erythropoietin, erythroid progenitors in polycythemia vera have been reported to be hypersensitive to granulocyte monocytes colony stimulating factors, interleukin 1, and insulin like growth factors also. Coming to the genetic basis of polycythemia vera, so in 2004, William Wenshenker's group discovered that a somatic mutation on chromosome number 9 was found in majority of the polycythemia patients, which was found to be JAK2 V617F located in exon 14. Subsequently, another mutation at exon 12 was also found in up to 3% cases. Another candidate that was considered previously was TET2 gene on chromosome 4. However, currently it is not considered the driver mutations of polycythemia vera. So, what is JAK? It is a group of tyrosine kinase, and in JAK family we have four types of enzymes, that is JAK1, 2, 3, and TYK2. The gene for this is located on chromosome 9, and this is a cytoplasmic tyrosine kinase that transduces signals specially triggered by the hematopoietic growth factors such as erythropoietin in normal as well as neoplastic cells. JAK2 binds to erythropoietin, thrombopoietin, GM-CSF, interleukin 3 and 5 receptors. So, JAK2 mutation is somatic and occurs at all the levels of hematopoietic stem cells. This is the structure of a JAK2 protein kinase, a tyrosine kinase, where we can see the various domains of such as kinase domain, pseudokinase domain, SRC homolog-like domain, and FERM. So the mutation occurs at the level of JH2. So which results in constitutively activated JAK2 kinases. So this is the mechanism of action of a wild type of JAK2 signaling, where we can see that this is a cytokine receptor where the cytokine will bind, and on binding there will be activation of JAK2, which will cause catalyzation or catalyzes tyrosine phosphorylation of cytoplasmic domain of this receptor and STAT. The STAT on activation will undergo dimerization and will translocate to the nucleus and will interact with the response element and result in transcriptional response. So negative feedback by suppressors of cyclin signaling take place. So when this JAK2 gets mutated, it gets constitutively activated and keeps on stimulating and phosphorylation further. Apart from this JAK-STAT pathway, other pathways also get subsequently activated and further result in increased amount of proliferation and survival of these hematopoietic cells. So, how does a single mutation leads to three different disorders under the category of myeloproliferative neoplasms, which are polycythemia vera, essential thrombocythemia, and primary myelofibrosis? So various theories have been given, such as stem cells at different stages may be the target of this mutation, or variable doses of JAK2 kinase activity, that is allele burden, may reflect the relative proportion of mutated and wild type protein in the cell. Specific genetic background of the host may be responsible. Pre-JAK2 molecular events which have been less studied could be responsible, or any non-mutational factors such as epigenetic mechanisms, microRNA expression abnormalities could also be responsible for this. Among the cytogenetics, other abnormalities which are found in polycythemia vera patient could be seen in up to 20% patients, which include an additional chromosome 8, 9, deletion of 20q, or deletion of 13. However, no Philadelphia chromosome or BCR radial fusion gene is demonstrated in this condition. These abnormalities could be found in up to 80 to 90% of post-polycythemia vera myelofibrosis, or in 100% cases of MDS or AML which are developing from polycythemia vera. The symptoms of polycythemia vera includes headache, weakness, pruritus, which is characteristically aquagenic, dizziness, diaphoresis, visual disturbances, and weight loss, paresthesias, joint symptoms, etc. On physical examination, we would find splenomegaly, plethora, conjunctival plethora, hepatomegaly can be seen, and blood pressure is generally raised. Other findings could be thrombosis and hemorrhage, which is the most common complication. Ischemic strokes and TIA, that is transient ischemic attacks, could be proved to be fatal. Bleeding can occur due to shortened platelet survivals and altered von Willebrand factor multimers. Budd-Chiari syndrome can occur that due to the thrombosis. Cutaneous manifestations can occur such as pruritus or acne urticaria. Erythromelalgia can be seen. Gastrointestinal complications such as duodenal ulcers, massive hemorrhages can also occur. Cardiovascular involvement may result in a complications such as myocardial infarction, hypertension. Splenomegaly is also seen in more than two-thirds of the patient. Respiratory symptoms such as dyspnea or complications like pulmonary hypertension can occur. Neuromuscular clinical manifestations such as visual disturbances, seizures, hemiparesis can also occur in these patients. So, how do we diagnose polycythemia vera? So, it depends on what stage the patient is presenting. Is he presenting in polycythemic phase or post polycythemic, or which is also known as spent phase? In the polycythemic phase, this phase is characterized by elevated levels of hemoglobin, hematocrit, and RBC mass. Whereas the post-polycythemic or spent phase shows reduced amount of erythropoiesis, granulocytic maturation is delayed, and atypical megakaryocytes are seen, which are normally not seen in the polycythemic phase of PE. Bone marrow fibrosis and hypersplenism can set in. There has been reports of low incidence of evolution of MDS or pre-leukemic phase or blast phase in polycythemia vera. So according to WHO 2017, there are few major as well as minor criteria for the diagnosis of polycythemia vera. The major criteria include elevated levels of hemoglobin more than 16.5 in men and 16 in women, along with elevated hematocrit of more than 48 in men, 49 in men, and 48 in women. Red cell mass is also increased by 25% above the mean value. Characteristically, the bone marrow biopsy shows hypercellularity with trilineage growth, which is also known as panmyelosis, including prominent erythroid, granulocytic, and megakaryocytic proliferation with pleomorphic megakaryocytes. That is, the megakaryocytes will have variable size ranging from small to normal size to large size, giant size megakaryocytes can also be seen. Thirdly, the presence of JAK2 V617F or JAK2 exon 12 mutation should be demonstrated. The minor criteria include subnormal serum erythropoietin level. The diagnosis of polycythemia vera requires all the three major criteria or first through two major criteria plus the minor criteria. The major criteria 2, that is bone marrow biopsy, may not be required in patients with sustained absolute erythrocytosis, that is hemoglobin more than 18.5 or in men or more than 16.5 in women with raised hematocrit levels if major criteria 3 and minor criteria are present. However, initial myelofibrosis, which may be seen in 20% of the patient, can only be detected after bone marrow biopsy. So ideally, bone marrow biopsy should be done in these patients at presentation. This finding may predict a more rapid progression to overt myelofibrosis. In the peripheral blood, we would find crowding of red cells, which will be normocytic normochromic. There will be neutrophilia, more than 60%, thrombocytosis in more than in 50% of the cases. Modest basophilia is common, and eosinophils are sometimes slightly increased. Bizarre platelet and megakaryocytic fragments are seen. In bone marrow, we have hypercellular marrow spaces with panmyelosis. Granulopoiesis will be normal, but the megakaryocytes will show pleomorphism, ranging from hyperlobation and loose clusters of the megakaryocytes will be seen, but they will lack cytological abnormalities, which will help us to differentiate polycythemia vera from the pre-fibrotic phase of primary myelofibrosis. Reticulin may be increased in 20% of the cases. This is a microphotograph from the bone marrow biopsy, which is showing the pleomorphism of the megakaryocytes. So, the ancillary diagnostic assays which can be done, first of all, we have to demonstrate a normal low level of EPO, which can be done by EPO assays, immunoenzymatic methods, or immunoassay antibody EPO complex, which can be measured by radioactive counting or chemiluminescence. Then JAK2 V617F mutation has to be demonstrated, which can be done by ARMS PCR or direct DNA sequencing, real-time PCR, RFLP, pyrosequencing, or JAK2 exon mutations have to be demonstrated. Then, how does the polycythemia vera, what's the evolution of polycythemia vera? That is, it can have a asymptomatic phase. It may have a erythrocytotic phase where all the counts are raised. It may enter into an inactive phase, or it may also enter ultimately into a leukemia. The incidence of AML or MDS in some series may have ranged from 5% to up to 15% in polycythemia patients, where the follow-up period was of more than 10 years. The median survival has been found to be more than 10 years in cases of polycythemia vera, with the common cause of death being thrombosis or hemorrhage. Myelodysplasia or AML can develop in 20% cases. So sometimes the patient may also develop post polycythemia vera myelofibrosis. So what is the diagnostic criteria for that? So the required criteria according to WHO is that we should have a documentation of previous diagnosis of WHO defined polycythemia vera. Along with that, there will be fibrosis of grade 2 to 3 on the scale 0 to 3, or grade 3 to 4 on scale of 0 to 4. Additional criteria, out of which two should be there, include anemia, erythroblastic picture, leukoerythroblastic picture, increasing splenomegaly, and constitutional symptoms. The treatment of polycythemia vera includes phlebotomy, thromboprophylaxis in form of aspirin. Pruritus can be dealt with antihistaminics. Cytoreductive therapy can be given, that is hydroxyurea or interferon alpha in refractory cases, or splenectomy or splenic radiation may be helpful. Cytoreductive therapy is not given in all the cases, but only in the patients which will have painful splenomegaly or some complications, which include hydroxyurea, interferon alpha, enagrelide, which is a prostaglandin synthetase inhibitor. Then low-dose phosphorus substitute was also being used. The next myeloproliferative neoplasm, which we are discussing, is essential thrombocythemia. This primary involves megakaryocytic lineage, and it is also a clonal stem cell disorder. It is characterized by overproduction of platelets and has been associated with JAK2 or MPL and also calreticulin mutations. The features include a raised amount of platelets in the peripheral blood, large mature megakaryocytes in the bone marrow, and episodes of thrombosis and hemorrhage. But before making this diagnosis, other myeloproliferative neoplasms should be excluded. Also, the inflammatory and infectious disorders and other hematopoietic and non-hematopoietic neoplasms should be excluded before coming to this diagnosis. The exact epidemiology or incidence of this entity is not known, but according to some studies, it is being ranging between 0.2 to 2.3 per 1 lakh population, with an age range of 50 to 60 years, having a female predisposition. Another peak can be seen in younger patients also. Rarely it has been reported in children. The thrombocytosis can also be reactive, which could be seen in cases of infections, tissue damage, chronic inflammation, malignancy, or renal disorders, etc. The etiology is not clear in this condition. However, pathogenesis has been attributed to the mutations in JAK2 V617F in up to 50 to 60% cases. Calreticulin mutations have been seen in 30%, and MPL mutations have been seen in 3% of these cases. There is upregulation of JAK-STAT target genes, resulting in increased production of platelets. Also, 12% of these cases are categorized as triple negative cases, where none of these mutations could be demonstrated. None of these mutations are specific for essential thrombocythemia. but their presence can exclude a reactive thrombocytosis. The thrombopoietin, which is a molecule responsible for the production of platelets, is a glycoprotein which stimulates production and differentiation of megakaryocytes. It binds to the surface of the platelets by MPL receptor. This MPL can undergo mutation in case of essential polycythemia. Uh, essential thrombocythemia. Neither thrombopoietin or MPL has been directly implicated in the pathogenesis of essential thrombocythemia. There has been an entity, familial thrombocythemia, which is an autosomal dominant disorder where activating mutations of thrombopoietin or MPL genes are responsible for TPO mediated thrombocytosis. Increased sensitivity to these TPO receptors in vitro has been demonstrated in some patients. Coming to the clinical features, many of these patients can be asymptomatic at the diagnosis, and the raised platelet count could be is an incidental finding in these patients. Others may present with microvascular occlusive events such as transient ischemic attack, headache, or a major vascular occlusive events such as stroke or myocardial infarction. Mucosal hemorrhages can also be present in some of the patients. Up to 50% may have splenomegaly, or some may have hepatomegaly also, but usually it is seen in minority of the cases and it is not marked. On the peripheral blood, the striking feature is the thrombocytosis, and these platelets show anisocytosis also. Although atypical platelets may be seen, but they are not common. In the bone marrow, it is to be noted that the cellularity may be normal or it may be increased, which helps us to differentiate this from the polycythemia marrow, where the hypercellularity is a more common feature. In essential thrombocythemia, we do not find increased cellularity on marrow in majority of the cases. Cellularity is normal, and the megakaryocytes are the clue for the diagnosis, where these will be large, having mature cytoplasm, deeply lobulated or hyperlobulated nuclei, which are called as the staghorn nuclei. So, the marrow will be normal cellular with increased number of large or giant megakaryocytes in small or loose clusters. There will be no significant increase in granulopoiesis or erythropoiesis. There will be no increase in blast or myelodysplasia. Reticulin will be normal or mildly increased, and iron stores will be present. So the major criteria according to WHO 2017 include a raised platelet count with bone marrow biopsy showing proliferation of megakaryocytic lineage with enlarged megakaryocytes, no significant or increase in left shift in neutrophils, very rarely or minor increase in reticulin fibers, and other criteria for other MPN should not be met. JAK2, CALR or MPN mutation should be demonstrated. Minor criteria include the presence of clonal marker other than the three which we have described, which could be ASLXL2, IDH, many others are there. Absence of evidence of reactive thrombocytosis. The diagnosis of essential thrombocythemia requires either all major criteria or first three major criteria plus the minor criteria. This is a flow chart which shows us what is the approach for a patient who comes with a raised platelet count. First of all, we have to exclude the reactive causes, repeat the smear to see if the reactive cause has gone and the platelets have normalized. If still they are persisting, then only we should go for the clonal markers. Along with the clonal JAK2, B617F and BCR-ABL1, we have to do EPO levels also, because that will also guide us that which MPN it could be. If it is BCR-ABL positive, then we can straightforward go to chronic myeloid leukemia. If it is negative, we have to look at the levels of erythropoietin. If the erythropoietin is low and it is JAK2 positive, polycythemia vera diagnosis is favored. If again JAK2 B617F is negative, we should also think of testing exon 12 if the EPO levels are low. If the EPO levels are normal or high, and JAK2 is plus minus BCR-ABL is negative, then we should we should give more importance to the bone marrow biopsy, where we will differentiate between the primary myelofibrosis and also the other causes such as essential thrombocythemia and MDS MPNs. Others will also be Other disorders, MPN, MDS, MDS should also be excluded based on bone marrow biopsy. So other diagnostic modalities which are to be done in this essential thrombocythemia is uric acid levels which are generally raised, or vitamin B12 which are increased, and acute phase reactants which will be raised in cases of reactive thrombocythemias. So also similar to polycythemia vera, essential thrombocythemia may also enter a myelofibrotic phase. The diagnostic criteria of it includes documentation of a previous WHO defined essential thrombocythemia with bone marrow fibrosis of grade 2 to 3 on a scale of 0 to 3 and grade 3 to 4 on a scale of 0 to 4, along with the additional criteria out of which at least two should be met, such as anemia, leukoerythroblastic picture, splenomegaly, raised LDH levels, and constitutional symptoms. The prognosis of essential thrombocythemia shows 10-year survival rate of 64 to 80%, and death usually occurs from thrombotic complications. AML can develop in 0.6 to 5% cases. So, management of the essential thrombocythemia also depends on what is the presentation or condition of the patient. If there is no complication or no thrombosis and the age is less than 60, then we can just observe the patient, or low dose aspirin can be given for microvascular symptoms. If there are hemorrhagic complications and age is more, then cytoreductive treatment is offered to the patient. Now, the next entity among this myeloproliferative neoplasm is a primary myelofibrosis. It is also a clonal MVN, and it is characterized by proliferation of predominantly megakaryocytes and granulocytes in the bone marrow. In the fully developed disease, it is associated with deposition of fibrous connective tissue accompanied with extramedullary hematopoiesis. This entity also has a pre-fibrotic phase and a fibrotic phase. The pre-fibrotic phase shows a hypercellular bone marrow with absent or minimal reticulin fibrosis. And fibrotic phase is characterized by marked reticulin or collagen fibrosis, sometimes osteosclerosis also. The incidence is reported to be 0.5 to 1.5 per 1 lakh population per year and occurs in elderly population. Only about 10% are reported in relatively younger individuals, less than 40 years, and incidence is equal in male and female. So it is the least understood among the MPNs, but there are increase in CD34 cells present in the blood as well as in the periphery, which have shown point mutations in the stem cell factor KIT. There is increase in megakaryocytes and other progenitors, and there will be a cytokine storm which is responsible for fibroblastic, osteoblastic, myeloid, and vascular proliferation. In these patients, it has been seen that the Wedge factor CM levels are raised. There will be expression of fibroblastic growth factor, which will be increased. Also, the negative regulator of the hematopoiesis, which is transforming growth factor beta, will be reduced. This is a diagram which shows the pathogenesis of primary myelofibrosis, in which megakaryocytes show increased expression of T-selectin and reduction in MPL, which in situ shows that TPO excess will result in clonal proliferation. These megakaryocytes, there will be emperipolysis, which will be facilitated by T-selectin ligand present on the neutrophils. Subsequently, there will be release of neutrophilic elastase, which will result in CD34 cell mobilization, and also release of other inflammatory mediators, which will result in fibrosis, osteosclerosis, and angiogenesis. Also, it has been seen, according to some studies, that CD46 positive bone marrow osteoprogenitor cells are increased in advanced stages of primary myelofibrosis. These cells are situated on the abluminal side of the bone marrow vessels and branching among the hematopoietic cells, which are significantly increased in advanced stages of PMF, which will parallel the extent of fibrosis and microvascular density. The clinical features include asymptomatic individuals at the diagnosis, which could be 30% of the patients. Diagnosis may occasionally result from discovery of unexplained leukoerythroblastosis or raised LDH levels. Patient may present with constitutional symptoms such as fatigue or dyspnea, weight loss. He or she may develop gouty arthritis, or splenomegaly is seen in 90% patients and hepatomegaly in 50% cases. So, in a WHO defined PMF, JAK2 V617 mutation is seen in up to 50 to 60% cases of early stages. Calreticulin mutations are seen in 24% cases. MPL have been reported in MPL mutations in 8% cases. Here also, about 12% cases are the triple negative mutations where none of these three are mutated, and the other there will be other clonal markers which we are not able to demonstrate. They could be responsible for this disease development. So, according to WHO 2017, the major criteria for the diagnosis of primary myelofibrosis is megakaryocytic proliferation, which are atypical, accompanied by the reticulin or collagen fibrosis. The criteria for other MPNs should not be met. It is necessary to demonstrate the mutations in JAK2, CALR, MPL mutation, or presence of another clonal marker. Absence of reactive myelofibrosis. That means the reactive causes should also be included first. The minor criteria include anemia, leukocytosis, palpable splenomegaly, raised lactate dehydrogenase, and leukoerythroblastosis. This peripheral blood smear is of a pre-fibrotic stage where the patient has anemia. Moderately elevated white blood cells can be seen. The platelet count can go up to 9 lakh, but in pre-fibrotic stage, teardrop cells are not seen and leukoerythroblastic picture is not found. The marrow in a pre-fibrotic stage of myelofibrosis will be hypercellular with proliferation of granulocytes and megakaryocytes. But characteristically, in primary myelofibrosis, the megakaryocytes will be clustered and they will be atypical. There will be no significant fibrosis in the pre-fibrotic stage. This picture shows the peripheral blood of fibrotic stage where the patient has anemia. Teardrop cell is a common finding. Mild leukocytosis will be there. Moderate but variable thrombocytosis along with leukoerythroblastic picture, and less commonly, a few blasts can also be seen. On bone marrow, the striking feature is the increased fibrosis, osteosclerosis, and reduction in cellularity. The megakaryocytes are very atypical looking with bizarre forms, hypercondensed chromatin, and naked megakaryocytic nuclei can be seen. Blasts can be present, but usually they are less than 20%. And there will be sinusoidal, that is extramedullary hematopoiesis, will be noted within the sinusoids. So, grading of the bone marrow fibrosis has been categorized or staged from 0 to 3, where 0 is the normal bone marrow, and 1 is MF1 is the loose network of reticulin with many intersections. MF2 is diffuse and dense, reticulin with extensive intersections. MF3 is diffuse and dense, increase in reticulin with extensive intersections, along with coarse bundle collagens associated with osteosclerosis. These are the panel of microphotographs which is showing the condensation of the reticulin fibrosis. The differential diagnosis of myelofibrosis depends whether it is a pre-fibrotic stage or a fibrotic stage. In pre-fibrotic stage, early polycythemia vera or essential thrombocythemia are the differential diagnosis. In the fibrotic stage, there could be any myeloid disorder which can result in fibrosis such as post-polycythemic myelofibrosis or CML in accelerated phase or MDS with fibrosis or AML or other hematopoietic disorders causing myelofibrosis which include Hodgkin lymphoma or non-Hodgkin lymphomas or hairy cell leukemias or other myelofibrosis causing conditions such as metastasis or autoimmune diseases. Now, how to differentiate between the essential thrombocythemia and a pre-fibrotic myelofibrosis? So, as we have discussed earlier, that the cellularity is usually normal in cases of essential thrombocythemia, where in pre-fibrotic PMF it will be increased. Myeloid to erythroid ratio will also be increased in pre-PMF, whereas it will be normal in essential thrombocythemia. Dense megakaryocytic clusters are rarely seen in essential thrombocythemia, whereas they are seen frequently in pre-PMF. Megakaryocyte size is large or giant in essential thrombocythemia, where it is variable in pre-PMF, and they are atypical. And reticulin fibrosis of grade 1 is more frequent in pre-fibrotic PMF, whereas it is very rare in essential thrombocythemia. So this is a disease which has a poor prognosis and no effective treatment is available. Allogenic stem cell transplant is the only therapy for a possible curative in BMF. So what can be done is just a wait and watch protocol, which is followed based on the symptoms and the progress of the disease. The drug therapies which have been tried are the immunomodulatory drugs such as pomalidomide or JAK2 inhibitors, mTOR inhibitors. A few words about the calreticulin, which is the third molecule which is mutated in some of these myeloproliferative neoplasm. It was detected in 2013 in majority of the patients which were negative for JAK2 or MPL. It is the second most common mutation in Philadelphia negative myeloproliferative neoplasm. It is a calcium binding protein which is involved in signaling and protein expression responsible for clearing misfolded proteins. All the mutations affects the exon 9, which generate a reading frame shift in the resultant protein. It can be detected by bidirectional sequencing of exon 9 or RFL. So, in essential thrombocythemia, overall cases up to 25% can show mutation in calreticulin, and 49 to 67% of JAK2 and MPL negative cases show calreticulin mutations. Younger patients with high platelet count and low hemoglobin than those with the JAK2 mutated essential thrombocythemia are calreticulin mutated. The risk of thrombosis is lower and they have a longer survival rate. In cases of primary myelofibrosis, 88% of patients which are negative for JAK2 MPL show this calreticulin mutation and they have a longer survival rate. Now, next coming to chronic neutrophilic leukemia, which is another myeloproliferative neoplasm, and only 150 cases, which are the proven cases of neutrophilic leukemia, have been reported. It occurs in elderly with equal incidence in male and female. Splenomegaly is the most constant feature in this MPN. Other features include hepatomegaly or mucocutaneous bleed, gout, or pruritus. Characteristically, the neutrophils in this entity have a toxic look, that is, they have toxic granulations. Platelets and RBCs are usually normal. So, important in diagnosing chronic neutrophilic leukemia is that we have to exclude the reactive increase in neutrophil count. Also, sometimes the patients having multiple myeloma or MGUS may be associated with a raised neutrophil count. So, we have to prove the clonality of neutrophils in that situation. In this entity, the lab will be normal to increased. So, cytogenetic abnormalities are found in 90% of these cases, such as additional 8 chromosome 9, 21, or deletion of 11. Also, the neutrophilic variant of CML should be ruled out first. This is a slowly progressive disease with a variable survival ranging from 6 months to up to more than 20 years. So, neutropenia is progressive anemia. Progressive anemia and thrombocytopenia cytopenia may also develop, and they can evolve into MDS, even ALS. So, what is the clonal marker of this chronic neutrophilic leukemia? It is being demonstrated as somatic activating mutations of CSF3R, most commonly T618I. So, the gene for this receptor, that is the colony stimulating factor 3, which is a primary growth factor for neutrophil production, it is located on chromosome number 1. CSF3R mutations involve exon 14 to 17, and it has been described in patients with having severe congenital neutropenia, which can later on evolve into acute myeloid leukemia. Two types of mutations have been described, that is membrane proximal mutation or truncation mutation. Sometimes CSF3R is also co-mutated with ZBP1 and ASXL1. This is a diagrammatic representation where we can see the CSF3R receptor, where the granulocytic colony stimulating factor are binding, further resulting in subsequent phosphorylation, and these pathways can be targeted by the tyrosine kinase inhibitors such as ruxolitinib. It has been found that if the CSF3R mutation is associated with ASXL1 mutation, which are frequent, they are prognostically bad for the patient. So, according to WHO, what is the diagnostic criteria for chronic neutrophilic leukemia? The WBC count should be more than 25,000 with neutrophils or plus band forms more than 80% of the WBCs. The neutrophil precursor should be less than 10%. Myeloblasts are rarely observed. Monocyte count should be less than 1000, and there should not be any dysplasia in the granulocytic lineage. The hypercellular bone marrow should be there with granulocytic preponderance, and neutrophilic maturation appears normal. Myeloblasts should be less than 5%, and they should not meet the WHO criteria for other MPNs. There should not be any rearrangement of PDGFRA or PDGFRB or PCM1 JAK2. In the fifth criteria, there should be presence of CSF3R T618, that is a common mutation, or other activating CSF3R mutations. Or in absence of CSFR3R mutation, persistent neutropenia at least for 3 months along with splenomegaly, and no identifiable cause of reactive neutropenia, including absence of plasma cell neoplasm, or if it is present, then demonstration of clonality of myeloid cells by cytogenetic or molecular studies is mandatory. Next, we come to the chronic eosinophilic leukemia. This is a myeloproliferative neoplasm with autonomous clonal proliferation of eosinophilic precursors with raised eosinophil counts of more than 1500 with no Philadelphia chromosomes and blast less than 20%. The diagnostic criteria of chronic eosinophilic leukemia includes eosinophil count more than 1500 with absence of other criteria of other MPNs. There should be no translocation 512 or other rearrangements of PDGFRB. No FIP1L1 PDGFRA fusion gene, no rearrangements of FGFR1 should be there. So we have to exclude all these because all these conditions also lead to eosinophilia. The blast count in the peripheral blood marrow should be less than 20%, and the AML, which has increased amount of eosinophils, that eosinophilic precursor, that is inversion 16, should be excluded. Clonal cytogenetic or molecular abnormalities or blast more than 2% in the peripheral blood or more than 5% in bone marrow. So the true incidence of this MPN is also not known, but it is found more commonly in males with peak incidence in fourth decade. The clinical features include fever, fatigue, cough, angioedema, muscle pains. Some patients may be asymptomatic. Endomyocardial fibrosis with restrictive cardiomyopathy is the most serious complication. Scarring of the mitral or tricuspid valve can also be seen in some of the patients, along with some showing peripheral neuropathy or CNS symptoms. In peripheral blood, we have eosinophilia with mature eosinophils. Few eosinophilic myelocytes or promyelocytes can be seen. Eosinophilic abnormalities such as sparse granulation with clear areas of cytoplasm, cytoplasmic vacuolations, or nuclear hypersegmentation or enlarged size can be seen. They may also have neutropenia along with monocytosis and basophilia. The bone marrow will be hypercellular and with eosinophilic maturation. Myeloblasts will range between 5 to 19%, and there may be presence of charcot-laden crystals. Dysplasia can be seen in other cell lineages. This is the bone marrow biopsy, which is showing presence of excess of eosinophils in the marrow with presence of charcot-laden crystals in this is the peripheral blood, which is showing increased amount of eosinophils in the peripheral blood along with the eosinophilic precursors in the marrow state. Lastly, we come to the myeloproliferative neoplasm unclassified. So the cases that have definite clinical, laboratory and morphological features of a myeloproliferative neoplasm, but it fails to meet the criteria of any specific entity, is classified in this category. Or that present with features which are having overlapping features of 2 or more MPN categories, they are also categorized in MPN and classifiable. So these diseases broadly falls into the three categories. The first one is early stages of polycythemia vera or primary myelofibrosis or essential thrombocythemia in which characteristic features are not yet fully developed. Advanced stages of myeloproliferative neoplasm in which pronounced myelofibrosis, osteoarthrosis or more aggressive stage has developed is the second category. The third category of the patients are those with convincing evidence of myeloproliferative neoplasm in whom a coexisting neoplastic or inflammatory disorder is also present, which is obscuring the morphological feature of that diagnosis. The presence of Philadelphia chromosome or the BCR-ABL fusion or other rearrangements, including PTGFR A and B or FGFR1, excludes the diagnosis of MPN unclassified. The differential diagnosis includes a reactive bone marrow, which can result in which can be due to infection or inflammation or other hematopoietic or non-hematopoietic neoplasms. This the exact incidence of this entity is not known, but some studies have reported it to be 10 to 15%. The clinical features are those of the other MPNs, and early stages will have a minimal organomegaly, and advanced stages will have a moderate to marked hepatosplenomegaly. The hematological values are variable, which range from mild leukocytosis and moderate to marked thrombocytosis, with or without accompanying anemia, to severe cytopenias and bone marrow failure, unexplained portal or stanchionic vein thrombosis. The peripheral blood shows thrombocytosis and variable neutropenia. Hemoglobin can be normal, decrease, or it can be borderline. And also, the bone marrow biopsy specimen shows hypercellularity, prominent megakaryocytic proliferation, and variable amount of erythroid and granulocytic proliferations. In later stages, the bone marrow specimen show fibrosis or osteosclerosis. More than 10% blast in peripheral blood or bone marrow or the finding of significant myelodysplasia generally indicates a transition of the disease to a more aggressive phase. So the patients in early stage of the disease will have a prognosis similar to those of the group into which it will eventually evolve. The patients with advanced disease in whom the initial process is no longer recognizable due to the bone marrow fibrosis or blastic infiltration would be expected to have a poorer prognosis. So this brings to the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arifat. Just wanted to ask one small little question.
Yes.
Is how frequently do you see the unclassifiable MPN?
Sir, it's not very common, but we have seen cases where we are unable to demonstrate the presentation will be overlapping between a PV or a ET or a PMF, and we are able and unable to demonstrate any clonal markers. So those could be classified under MPN unclassifiable. I have not seen many cases of MPN unclassifiable. Most of the times we are able to classify it under one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. That is what I was trying to think, because that anything unclassifiable would be a very difficult diagnosis.
Yes, sir, because as they have said that it may be a stage where the MPN is developing into a particular entity and that the patient has come to us earlier.
Just let me check if there are any questions on the YouTube. There aren't any. Thank you so much, Dr. Arifa, for taking out time
Thank
from
you.
your such a busy schedule. Please share the PDF so that we can share with everybody.
Sir,
Thank you so much.
I want to say something. In the previous session, there was one question about the
Yes,
thrombocytopenia in case of CML. So I tried to search.
Yeah.
I could find a few possible answers to that. That either the CML is evolving into accelerated phase or a blast crisis at that time, platelet count may be low, or it in the patients receiving the therapy, it may be low, or if the usually it is not a common finding, so if it is there, so we should also exclude at that time other MDS or MDS MPNs. This is a possible answer I could find. If you can just substantiate on that. If,
No, I think that's perfectly fine. Exactly. Possibility of an MDS MPN is a very strong possibility in cases which is
yes.
which when we see low platelet, it's a very strong possibility.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ariba. Wonderful lecture. Take care. Bye bye. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good night, sir.
Good night.